So this is the January meeting of Division 5 of the Lone Star region. So I want to welcome everybody to that. And we've got a great clinician lined up here. So before we get to them, I want to do a few announcements. And so we have the National Train Show coming up in August. Just want to remind everybody of that hasn't registered or wants to. And then I think we've got the Plano Train Show this weekend, and not sure if I can talk about it yet, but I do want to mention it. I did get, I think the NMRA interchange that y'all have heard about is going to be officially announced. I think in about a week or so is what I heard. So it'll be on Discord, and there'll be a little steps you got to go through to register in that, and Speed was showing it to me yesterday, and so I think it'll be pretty cool. There's a lot of guys on there. There's a couple different threads and things on that. I could probably actually pull it up and just give you all a preview of it right now. If I can find, I closed this out. Oh, there it is. Gotta find the application here, so take a minute to sign in. But so this will be pretty neat here. Screen share. All right, so here's just so you'll have this is the running the Discord app here. So when you come in, you've got this little place right here is where you type in your NMRA number, and it auto registers you into the system. And so since we're in Division 5 of the Lone Star region, when you put your name in there, it's actually going to assign you to the Lone Star region, and then Division 5 will have like their own little thread there that they can set. And I think you can get invited to other regions and divisions if you want to. There's kind of like a worldwide thing. There's people on here posting. I just put this up yesterday of a little section on this diorama that I'm doing. So I think it'll be pretty neat just to see what people are up to. And then there's going to be, news, NMRA events, right there, just, different discussions. If you have a YouTube channel, you can promote yourself on there. And then they got special interest groups. If you got interest in the prototypes, they'll like discussions on, all this different stuff. There's a Milwaukee there. And so I think this will be pretty cool for, all of the guys here in the NMRA for their membership, us to get to talk. I actually started working on trying to put one together for the Division 5. But I need to work on it some more. So that's in the works on that. And so I might need to get Speed to help me out. Learn the software. So it's all, seems like he can do some pretty cool stuff with it. So I think that right now that's all the news and announcements I got. And I do want to say, if we got anybody that wants to do a clinic for February and March, got those open right now. So, and I'll be trying to get some clinicians lined up for that too. So, John, I think you sent me some pictures, so I've got them here ready to go if you want to talk about them real quick.
Sure.
And, let me pull them up. So I'll start with the first one. I guess you sent me here. So just let me know when you want to have me switch them.
Yeah, in the last year, I've rebuilt this whole center section of the layout. What I originally tried to do didn't work out. So last year when I was skiing, I started thinking about what I wanted to do and got out my pen and pencil and sketched this up and came back and rebuilt all the framing and decked it over with 3/4 inch plywood because I'm in G gauge and it's pretty heavy. And I've spent the last year trying to get the tracks in there. And in the background, way off in the background, there's a diamond that I built, which isn't quite finished yet. It sort of half-assed works.
John, this is G gauge what I'm looking at?
Yes.
How big a room is this?
It's pretty big. It's 47 by 31 or 41. Yeah, 41.
Yeah, I had G gauge in my backyard. Nothing like that.
Yeah. Well, up here at my other house, you have to contend with the deer and the elk. So I just don't put it outdoors.
Yeah.
And it's too hot up here anyways. I don't.
Well, that was Kingwood. That was a whole lifetime ago.
Yeah. So I got three sidings in the middle there that everything's. I finally finished in the last 2 weeks. Finished powering things up and putting ground throws in to make them work, and then I've got three main areas on the railroad where you can drop off cars and stuff, and this will hold about 24 cars, I think, or more for the three sidings here, and the boxes are my future buildings. And I'm going to have a railroad station in the foreground there at that white building area. And you can see some coffee cans over there standing up. That's going to be my area where I'm going to put in a Texas-style elevator, grain elevator, and probably have an intermodal yard off to the left there.
Cool.
It's 235 feet roughly to walk around the layout.
Oh, jeez.
So it's all indoors and it's sort of better.
Is it modern era, or do you have a special era that you're working on?
Oh, I started buying stuff years ago. I've been doing this over 30 years. This is the third layout. And so when I first got into it, the only stuff you could get was, transition era
Right.
Equipment. So I've got a lot of transition era equipment, but I've also got a lot of modern stuff. So there's storage underneath the layout, and everything runs down a ramp and goes into storage. There's 13 double-ended sidings down below that hold 15 car trains. They're 25 feet long or more.
Yeah, they are.
So all the modern stuff is down below, except for that one intermodal car on the left. So I periodically change it. So this is I started into. I have volunteered to be open for people coming and going to the NMRA convention through Amarillo. So I decided it's got to look better when you walk in the door. And so I'm trying to hide all the distractions that are underneath. And I started putting up fascia board on the front. And this was where I was a couple days ago. And this is where I was tonight. I put in about 80 feet of this stuff. They're 8-foot sections and they're 11 inches wide. And I got clothespins underneath. So, hold up the fabric.
Yeah.
And that's going to improve the whole layout. And the next thing I'm going to do is, after I put up some fabric, is to ballast all the foreground track that you see when you walk in. So it'll look semi-finished. I was trying to get photo backdrops in, but I just don't see that happening before August.
It's looking good. I think the fascias makes it look really cool. So, and the skirting.
Yeah, the blue is off of the stuff that I tore out in the old center section there.
Are you going to keep it blue or?
No, I don't know. Sort of tempted to. I was thinking I was going to make it something dark. You think blue looks good?
It matches the back. If you keep the back of it blue, so Yeah.
It will show marks more easily than some other colors.
What's
Handprint,
that?
things like that.
What's that, Rusty?
It will show marks if you scratch it or if people put their hands on it. You spill a cup of coffee on it easier than a darker color.
Yeah.
I think since is your skirting there dark brown, a brown color or like a green
No,
color?
it's black filter fabric that you
Okay.
use. And I just cut a hunk off of the roll and decided I'd put it up so I could get an idea what it was going to look like.
Is that what you're going to use? And why did you choose that as opposed to fabric?
It's cheap and I had it.
Oh, okay. All right.
It comes in 4-foot widths, and my wife has convinced me that I should cut it off and use the natural 4-foot piece and run it vertically instead of horizontally, because you always want to get to the stuff underneath the layout. And she said, well, you can't get under there, and all the stuff that's hidden here on the right behind the fabric is travel equipment. So every time we go to the mountains, we take cold goods and things, and those are mostly ice chests and things.
Okay.
Cool. I think you're gonna have to send us some pictures when you get all that done.
Yeah. I've been home 2 weeks tonight.
Yeah.
I spent a 3-week vacation over the holidays in Austin, redoing my daughter's floors.
Well,
yeah,
I see you survived that. So
yeah. It was 22 brutal days of nonstop work, and I was going to come home New Year's Eve during the day, and my wife says, "How close to being done are you?" I said, "I've got about 2 more days," and she said, it's 8 hours each way to Austin from here. She said, "You just need to stay there and finish it."
I got to go there this weekend. It's only 7 hours, 7.5 for me.
Oh,
cool. Well, thanks, John, for showing all that for us. So,
hey, I'm happy to share it.
Yeah.
Well, if anybody's up here in Amarillo and wants to come see me, I'm in the NMRA layout directory. You can always find out how to contact me, and come on up. I'll stick a throttle in your hand, and you can walk around the layout and chase a Hudson or a diesel around and drop some cars at the sidings.
Yeah, I've been up there.
There's no duck unders either.
Yeah,
and you walk in I got a walkout garage basement. Okay, so you walk in and got a walker or something like that. I can take care of that too.
Cool. All right. Well, before we get to our clinician, I'd like to, Rusty or BJ, do you have anything you'd want to share for a few minutes, and then we'll get to Micheal here.
I don't have anything really going. We have a show scheduled for mid-March over spring break.
Cool.
Last 5-6 days.
Okay.
I just wish there was one more train man around this area, and I haven't found him in the 13 years I've been in Alpine. The only thing I got going is this thing, and that's what I've been working on. That was one of 2 units that the Milwaukee had running up in northern Montana. So that's why I wanted to build it, coming from Montana. Wow. And we're getting it pretty well machined and put together. I've got to connect the drives to the motor, and I've got to get the DCC unit for it and plug it in.
You scratch building all that, or kit bashing, or?
No, there's no kit there.
Okay.
The,
That's what
the wheels are off, and the motor up under there is out of a Kato SD3, and this is a 3D printed chassis, and that's all the metal part there is all hand machined on a mini lathe or mini drill press. So,
cool. Well, let us know how that project turns out when you get the decoder in it and stuff. So, or send some photos also, and I'll put them in the newsletter.
If I've got your email, I guess I do. I wouldn't be here.
Yeah.
I will send you some pictures of the railroad with some of the things like Glacier Park and, Salt Lick and things like that.
Yeah, I think you sent me one or two. I think at first when you were asking me, but I got an email. Yeah. So
Ryan
got
Dam
an
in
email.
Great Falls, Montana. That's some things on the railroad are actually after a real thing.
Nice. Cool. Well, thanks for sharing that with us. And so I want to welcome our presenter for tonight. And his name's Micheal Groves from Dwarvin. And he builds fiber optic solutions for lighting your layouts. And so it's pretty neat. I actually got to host with him on an NMRAX I guess a couple years ago, or it seems like a couple years ago now. And I was actually had the pleasure of meeting him in person at the train show or national train show back in August this last year. So without any further ado, Micheal, you can take it away and tell us what you got.
Okay. So I need you to enable me to share screen.
You should be able to do that now.
Good. Okay, now I got to find where my presentation is. Okay. Good.
And before we get going, do you want to do if anybody has questions, do you mind if they ask them during that, or do you want to save that until the end?
Perfectly fine. Okay. So let's put that up. Okay. All right. Can you guys see that slide?
Yes, I can.
Okay, and I'm just going to check my mouse works. Yeah, it does indeed. Okay, so I want to give you a little bit of a history of how I got into this ridiculous situation of running a company at my tender age. It was a bit of a story, but I sort of got into this working with fiber optics in a backwards way. So I'll explain that as we go through here. So you may see it shows that's my darling wife who'll be at shows, and our next one will be up at Amherst, I guess, Springfield. Most of you guys probably don't come that far north, but last year it got snowed out badly. Anyway, so I'm going to give you a brief history of my model railroading days. So when I was aged 11, I started with great vigor, enjoying running trains around in my bedroom. And at age 13, I stopped promptly as my parents moved to Australia, and I moved with them because I was only 13 at the time. And when I got to Australia, I discovered all sorts of other things that were going on in life, including girls and other things and music. And so I just stopped working on trains. And then at about age 31, my wife gave my son, who was then age 7, a train set and said, "Here, darling, you're going to go and play with your son. Stop fooling around, just go and enjoy time with him." And so that's what we did in fact, it's gone on ever since that age. So quite a while. Well, at age 55, I moved from New Jersey, if I've got the accent right, across from New Jersey into Pennsylvania. And I sawed my train set in half, well, actually in parts. And there it is, out in the driveway. I used a Sawzall for it. I mean, that's the usual tool to cut your train up, isn't it? And I couldn't find a machete anyway, so I just used the Sawzall. It was a little brutal on it, but, things have worked out okay. And that's my son who was working with me on all the trestle work. You can see the cold tipple there and stuff. So rather fun moving that to our new abode. So what I learned a couple of things. I learned that rejoining sections is a pain, especially if you cut them apart with a Sawzall, a bit rough. But the other thing I really learned was rewiring is an absolute headache. So I decided, okay, I'm going to have to do something about this. So on my layout, I had some grain of wheat bulbs. That's my son's coal tipper that he put together. And it's got a grain of wheat bulb sticking on there. And I discovered, okay, very nice, very small, bright, horribly difficult to solder. Has anybody used grain of wheat bulbs in the past?
Yes.
Yeah, then you know exactly what I mean, right? Lots of wiring, horribly difficult to replace. So what I decided to do was, okay, so I'll take a look at LED lights. So, and of course, LED lights pose a new problem to everybody because you've got an anode and a cathode. So instead of just being able to wire it up a grain of wheat bulb, whichever way you like, you're stuck with having to get the polarity right. And you've got to put a resistor in series with it. So it's a little bit more difficult, but obviously a nice and very nice technology to come along. So I looked at Evans Designs and said, oh, yeah, okay, I could probably use that on my layout. That might be very, very nice. When I got to this next picture, though, was when I went, oh, no, I'm not doing that. Oh, no, look at all those wires. And I just said to myself, that's for the birds. I've just chopped my train set up. I've now mounted it in my basement after 2 years. All the labels have fallen off the wires. I don't know what wire goes where, and I'm not going to go through that again. So that's where I sort of stopped with Evans Designs and said, okay, well, I'm not going down that road. And of course, that was my biggest fear, getting stuck with all that wiring spaghetti. So obviously don't let that happen to you type of attitude. So I was at, I was at the Big E, Amherst, back in 2019, and I met up with this guy, Rick Wilkins. And Rick said, here, see a picture of this nice control board. He said, no, do you want to see behind it? I said, oh, man alive, that's neatly wired up, isn't it? So I then started looking at Woodland Scenics. And that looked like an attractive approach to me because they take care of all of the soldering issues and attaching small wires, all the resistors as well. Everything's taken care of. And so I thought, well, maybe this is a way to go. Until I looked at all the components and I went, oh boy, I'm going to get lost on that thing because I need several of these, one of these. And if I had a couple of more lights, I need a couple more of those things, boxes. And so on it goes. And I'm not a designer. So I like to just slap it together and let it go. And I realized, no, this is not going to work for me. So what I learned about LEDs, inexpensive, long-lasting, polarity and voltage are critical. Spaghetti wiring is still a big challenge. And the just plug system, well, maybe that is a solution. So why didn't I go with it? Well, I did find it was too expensive, and I'll explain why in a moment. Still lots of wires hanging around. And the wires break easily, which I didn't know at the time, but that's what my customers keep telling me and why they're actually switching to my product. And I went, okay. But fundamentally, I love being creative. So I'm not a designer, but I love just being creative. I love creating new ideas, whether it be with companies. I was in the medical business, by the way, before this, and created a company that did something that was very different from what anybody else had done in the world. So I love creativity. And this one I thought this really limits creativity. So then I said to myself, well, how about fiber optics? I'm a physicist in background, so optics and all that stuff doesn't frighten me one little bit. No wiring, easy to install, but how are you going to power them? So I asked some people and they said, oh, no, you can't really use fiber optics. People have tried that and it doesn't work. Oh, hold a minute, it doesn't work. Well, you don't say that to a physicist. I mean, I'm likely to land you on the moon, not, so I just said, okay, that's a challenge. We're going to meet that challenge. So I decided, okay, I'm going to put down some things for what I want for a lighting system. I want to have realism. I want to have reliability. I want a very easily installation. I do want it cost effective, but almost above all of this, I want it to be able to provide for imagination, be able to do lots of different things with it. And I must admit, at the time, I didn't know what I could really do with fiber optics, but I thought it probably would be a way to go. So that's the prototype. That's what I put together way back in probably, this was around 2009. So I just have some fiber optics you can see there. I'm not sure if I can use my mouse. Can you see my mouse pointer there?
Yes.
Okay, good. Excellent. All right. So there's the fibers, obviously. There's a piece of heat shrink tubing. I didn't shrink it. It's just so I could hold some fibers. I've got a lens there. I got this whopping big LED that's a car LED. I've got a big power supply there that's running at about 1.5 amps. And then I've got a big heat sink sitting off the back here, which you can't see very well, and a whopping big fan here to keep the heat out of it. So that was my layout. And I used that and the fibers for a couple of years and was very, very happy with it. So the question is, so what happened then? Well, age 65, my grandson was age 13. He comes along and he starts working on my train layout, doing some soldering of some circuits I wanted him to design up. And I thought, this 13-year-old's going to be an engineer, and that means money. And if he wants money, it's not going to grow on trees. He said he could borrow it. And I said, no, you're not borrowing it. Let's create a company. Let's make something. So that's what we did. So we came out with, in 2018, so it took quite a while, a couple of years actually, to design up something that was rugged, that you could throw on the floor and it's not going to break. And we just stick a fiber in and you could be able to get light out of the end. So that's what we called our lamp lighter. And that's, physically, that's the sort of size of the box itself. So it's a nice small box where you could stick fibers into it. So the idea was really conceptually very simple and still is, namely that you can take your layout, drill a hole under a building, stick a fiber into this lamp lighter, run the fiber up into the building, and hey presto, you've got light. So I tell people, if it takes you more than 30 seconds, you either didn't find the hole, you didn't drill, you don't know how to use a drill, but it shouldn't take you long to do that sort of thing. Or alternatively, just take a lamp and with a fiber on it and drill a hole again, stick that down into the lamp lighter. So that conceptually is what I wanted to have as the sort of simplicity of the system. And that's what it does do. So I'm not sure if this is going to work. This is a video. I think it may work. Let's see. Yep. So I've got a fiber. I stick the fiber into my lamp lighter box. I then take the fiber. I can cut the fiber very easily. I just take a Xeron type tool or some sharp cutting instrument, cut the end of the fiber, and I've still got light. Then I'm just going to drill a hole, stick it up under a building, and hey presto, I've got light. So that's what I mean about pretty simple way to be able to light a building. So there's a part of my layout. You'll often see me with English cars. I used to want a Rolls Royce. That's long ago. I've got out of that mode right now. So what you're seeing there are some of our swan neck lamps. And what you'll see, and what I'm going to focus on in a moment, is how it actually creates pools of light rather than what an LED does typically, which is create a flood of light. We can also see, obviously, the lighting in the buildings behind. This has a single fiber in it. This has a single fiber in it as well, and likewise with these. So
let me ask you a question about your buildings. Yeah. Do you see any difference if you bring the fiber into the bottom and illuminate it from the bottom up, or run it up to the top and force it to make a U-turn and from the top down? Is there a difference? One is a lot harder than the other, but is there a benefit?
There is. You're actually going to walk me into something that I was going to talk about downstream, but I'm going to talk to you about it right now. So the other day, Jim, you probably heard Jim Kello, right? I did a show on Jim Kello's show, and I basically was just going to show how to light a station. And one of the things that I do always with a building, do you see underneath there what I've got in there?
Tinfoil.
Tinfoil, absolutely right. So I always go upstairs, I grab my wife's, we call it alfoil, grab that, tear off a piece of it, slap it on the ceiling immediately. That gives me two things. It gives me the ability not to see light through the top of the building, which is really disgusting. But some of my customers do send me pictures and say, do you like it? And I go, oh, I changed that. But the other is actually scatters the light back down into the rest of the room, which makes it very, very simple to do. The other thing I do on these windows is they've all got, I don't know if you can see, I don't know if you can see that, but you can probably see I've got frosting on each of those. Just grab it.
Okay.
Sorry,
My buildings have interiors.
Yes.
And
What is this? So there's an interior. And in fact, what I did was I made a little interior because I wanted to create, I put a picture on the inside of this
right.
that you can see there.
Uh-huh.
I wanted to be able to light that very easily. And then but I've always put some tissue paper or something along the windows because that diffuses the light and gives you a much more gentle glow. And the other thing is I don't really want to see fibers. I don't want to see the lights themselves. I really want to see the effect of those. So it gives you some idea. That's a great question. Great question. So you may find me repeating myself in a moment as we go through this presentation. I like that. So yeah. So I want to talk a little bit about this whole idea of pools of light. I had a guy come by a show I was doing, and he looked at my diorama and he said, "Michael, that's perfect lighting." And I said, "Why is that perfect to you?" And he said, I'm a stage director. And he says, "I want to be able to move things between dark and light areas." And he said, "By the way, that's real too. When you're out on the street, you don't have everything lit the same. It's not a football field. It's dark and light areas. And if you've got a train moving by, it'll help really set the scene of that train moving from the light to the dark." So he then said to me, he said, "The challenge with LEDs is they provide a wash of light. And the reason is because their light comes out at about 135 degrees. And so you get a big cone of light. With fiber optic lighting, and first I thought it was a problem, you only get about a 40-degree spread of light. And that's due to the physics of how light travels down a fiber. So what you see there, do you see those pools of light? And you see dark in between? That, people have told me, is much, much more prototypical than you can get it with LEDs. You can buy LEDs with special lenses on them and so on to try and get that effect. But I don't have to worry about that. This just comes naturally with the technology. So, yeah, and there you can see I got a Jaguar on the left. I got my E-type Jag, my Rolls Royce on the left, and at the back is my E-type Jag. And you can see a nice sort of pool of light sitting down onto that car. The other thing, so let's say I've got a little area in my train layout that I really want somebody to focus on. And I have these guys digging away, as people do, they dig up the road, fill it in, dig it up again, and make a nuisance of themselves. So I had this on my layout, and nobody ever noticed it. And then I popped a little light over it. Bingo! Suddenly it comes alive. So it's really a nice way to be able to bring something alive very, very simply and easily. And of course, then you see a Mini on the left. So I've got Minis, Jaguars, Rolls Royces. They're all typically English cars. So I've got a friend of mine, Al Judy, you may not know him. He's in the narrow gauge scale. And he came and grabbed some lights from me. I paint them very nicely green. He grabbed some, and 2 hours later, he sent me back these pictures where they're all rusted, and he's removed all my nice green paint from them. And you see this guy who's just, looking down his barrel here, to see if you can pick up some odd food or whatever. But once again, this light's not providing a flood. It's providing this nice narrow beam that really helps the person see what, where the action is. Now I have to introduce you to some of my dwarves. So we're called Dwarvin because of my oldest grandson enjoying Tolkien. And so we refer to our guys as dwarves. That's Benjamin. He's my youngest one. He's now 18. And here he's making the gooseneck or swan neck lamps in my basement. So one of my fun little projects is making this English pub. We call it the Wet Whistle for some reason. And actually, my wife's great at naming companies and naming things. And what you're going to see here, a number of different features. I've obviously lit the inside of this building. By the way, it's just scratch built. And the roof is nothing other than pieces of wood with ink where I've actually created striation to make it look as though it's got real roofing on it. But Anyway, that's beside the point. But one of the things you're going to see is, you see the lights in the tree? That's just tiny fibers. So there's a 0.5 millimeter fiber stuck up into the tree. You also see my umbrellas. In fact, let me go back for a moment. So all I did with these, I wanted sort of this Cinzano looking umbrella here. These are the typical sort of cocktail umbrellas that you buy. And my wife said, well, why don't you buy some of those and just trim them down because they're way too big. And now you've got your little umbrellas for your tables. So I, again, I ran a fiber up there, hit it out the back, and that shines nicely down onto the tables. Now, one of the things you do get is a bit of a fiber spaghetti, because obviously you are going to light things, and you're going to run a lot of fiber. Obviously, it's half the number of wires, right? Because you run one fiber for every 2 wires that you would run. But what I didn't realize at first, was it was going to be very easy to trace my fibers, because there is a small amount of light glow from them. And so what happens is I'm able to just, so if I want to change where one is, I can just trace that up to it, drill another hole, poke it up somewhere else. Very, very quick to diagnose where everything is. Now, I got a customer, Paul McCarty. He's an N-scaler out in Utah. And he said his grandchildren enjoy looking at his fiber spaghetti underneath his layout more than watching his train. So he said, you changed the story for these guys. So the lamp lighter design, it's a very bright LED. It's very easy to mount. It's just 2 screw holes basically underneath. So if I take this and show you, basically, well, you just take any of those and screw it underneath your layout. There's very few components needed, and it's very easy to trace the lighting. And obviously, if you've done wiring, you know how horrifically difficult it is to trace your wiring, especially when all the labels came off your wires. So I describe it as a 2-component system. Basically, your lamp lighter and some fiber. That's really all you need to get started with. So we sell it as a starter kit, 30 foot of fiber. It comes with a lamp lighter 1. We also have a lamp lighter 2, which we'll get into in a minute, and that comes with 60 foot of fiber. Yeah. So I want to briefly talk about the different sizes of fibers that we have, because it's quite interesting. We start at the bottom with 0.5 millimeter. Those are sort of little pinpoints of light. So you put candles into windows, you put lights up into a tree, that's the size fiber you want to use. It's very, very thin. If I've got one around, no, I've got thicker ones here. I just thought I might have a couple around where I could show you. No, I don't. But you can literally tie a knot in it. It's very, very easy to work with. Then we go up to 0.75 millimeter, and by that time we've doubled the light intensity, because the light intensity goes to the square of the diameter of the fiber, and that's really suitable for N-scale lamps and for running to cars, car headlights, car taillights. Again, very easy to put those in. We go to 1 millimeter. Again, we've doubled the light intensity. We'll get down that fiber. That's more suitable for HO lamps and for N-scale houses. Put it up to 1.5. Again, we've just actually increased it by 2.25, but I'll call it double the light intensity. That's what we use for our O lamps, and is suitable for HO houses. And then the 2 millimeter, which is kind of ropey and rather thicker, is much more suited to O scale houses. Now we're getting into G scale and that sort of a scale. Not as flexible, but a lot of light that you can get through. So going from 0.5, we're going 2, 4, 8, 16 times the amount of light that we get through a 0.5. So you can see there's quite a good dynamic range. So choosing a fiber will determine the amount of light. So if we want to add lamps, then it really is a 3-component system. So you can sort of compare that with the Woodland Scenics. That's where my head was going, I don't really want to have all those components. I just want something darn simple that, so a customer can go, I just need some lamps. Got it. Two components. That's all you buy. Lamp lighter and buy some lamps. So I'm just going to walk you through, and this one I'm going to do fairly quickly. At a show, I'd take a bit more time, but that's my sort of, I got a 6-foot spread there. And this is where I've got all of my sort of lit up buildings. So there's my English pub you saw with the lit up tree. There's my little one that I showed you at the beginning with the Rolls Royce there and the E-Type Jag and so on. Then I got some other buildings, and I've got this walkway along here along the riverfront. And so I've got a lot of lights in there. I wanted to do is I did a quick comparison with what it would take compared to Woodland Scenics. So before I get to that, this is my diorama that I put together. This is what you'd see at a show. If you come to a show and see what I've done, you're going to again see these pools of light. By the way, an interesting point here is, you see, I put a spotlight. What I did was I drilled a hole 45 degrees, stuck a fiber up there just below the surface so I can't see the fiber light, and it shines straight onto that sign. So very, very quick, very, very simple. You can see my car back there that's got these dazzling headlights. It's actually got 1 millimeter fiber, and it should have been 0.75. But I got a little campfire down here. I've got 0.75 millimeter fibers being used in these tents. So, and then I've got some carriage lamps here to add some creativity to the scene. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Nice. Sorry.
Mike, going back to that last one, when you had that spotlight on the Riverbend campground, is it drilled from down on the ground, or is it up on the framework of the Riverbend, of the frame of the sign?
No, it's actually right into the base of, so if this was your layout, it'd be right into the plywood or whatever, homoso, whatever it was. Yep.
It's ground level.
It's ground, yeah, sorry, it is ground level, and it's just shining from there. And in fact, you can see another light back here. It doesn't really show up very well here because you're seeing all the foreground, but this is lit up too. And again, that's just, I just stuck a fiber up behind this house, and so I can light up my backdrop.
Oh, excellent. Okay. I've got one of your kits. I just have never used it. I've got the number 2.
Good for you. Okay. All right. Well, we're going to cover some tricks you can really do with it. So let's go through that. Okay. Balls of light, we talked about that. So that's the product. There's our second oldest grandson, David. He makes all the lamplighter boxes. So he's my absolute expert in that. He'll knock one of those out in 4 minutes flat. It's pretty good now that he's got the art down. So we've got carriage lamps. And actually, those are made by my wife. They're 3D printed by David, the grandson. So he prints those up. But my wife does the assembly. We also have globe lamps. Again, that's 3D printed material. Highway lamps. And then industrial building lamps. And it's interesting. Those, I didn't know that would be an important seller. We took it to a show. Within 2 hours, I was completely sold out. And I went, wow, maybe that's an important product. So that just, that's on that little diorama.
You going to make those for N-gauge?
Yeah, we got them in HON as well as O gauge.
But not N?
Yeah, no, got them in N.
Oh, okay. I need
Sorry, yep. So we've got, in fact, that's the first one we came out with, was actually an N gauge, N scale, and then followed it up with this HO. We had to get some pretty thin tubing in order to be able to make that work. But we buy this really very, very thin-walled stainless steel. It's the sort of stainless steel that's used for hypodermic syringes.
Okay.
So it's been kind of fun getting into that stuff. And then a customer said to me, well, actually, he sent me a picture, and he had 2 of our swan neck lamps glued together on his station platforms. I went, oh no, don't do that. We could make a lamp for you like that, which will look a lot more attractive. So basically what we've done is we just take 2 lamps, and those go down into one sleeve, basically. And now you've got something that you can use on your station platform. So that's a pretty new product, actually. So we've got the N-scale swan gooseneck lamps. And then, so I want to talk briefly about the Lamplighter 2, which is, you've just mentioned, you've got one of those. Initially, I just designed that up. I thought that's definitely for all the O gauge folks. That's where it is. It's double the capacity of the Lamplighter 1. And initially, it was brighter. Now it's not brighter at all because the LEDs we use in the Lamplighter 1 have actually become more efficient. We're able to buy brighter ones. So let me just see. Okay, so all right. Okay, I just usually I have a couple more slides, but what I did anyway with this lamplighter 2, I thought it would just be for O gauge, and then I discovered HO people, and to my biggest surprise, a lot of N scalers were buying the lamplighter 2, and I went, "What's going on?" So I called some of them, and they said, "It's very easy, Michael. I can light my whole N scale layout with one product, one unit, and I can do everything because I'm using much smaller fibers, so a lot more fibers can go into the box and so on." So you live and learn. Never know what a customer is going to do with your product, but I was really glad we made that one. So let's talk briefly about the capacity of the lamplighters. So remember, we've talked a bit about the sizes of fiber, and I'm going to focus on the 1.5 and the 1.0 because that's our most commonly sold fiber. So if I've got a lamplighter 1, it'll take about 13 of the 1.5 millimeter fibers, so it'll light about 13 buildings, or 26 lamps can be fit into that. Obviously, if you're N scale, then it's 26 buildings you could light with it, and more like 50 lamps you could put into it. So it's got a lot of capacity. Lamplighter 2 is, of course, just double that, so we just multiply by 2. So that's a nice, easy thing to do. So it gives you some idea. So yeah, oh, sorry, this is where this one went. I've just talked about that, so let's jump off it. So I'm going to talk briefly about some tips, things that I found people really like to know about the product, working with fiber. First of all, cutting it. Very important to get a nice clean cut at the end of a fiber. If you don't, you'll get a lot of light reflection back down the fiber. So utility knife turns out to be the best. A pair of really sharp shearing action cutters next. The others you can use, for example, a wire cutter but as long as the shearing action is there. But if you use one that's got where it's blades coming together, say rail nippers, people ask me, "Oh, can I use rail nippers?" I go, absolutely not. You'll get a pointed end to your fiber and you'll lose 50% of your light. So that's really important. Can you paint it? Well, yeah, just take a translucent paint, something like a Tamiya. There's a number of other manufacturers make translucent paint. And there I am just it looks like a matchstick, actually. I've got a fiber there, putting a little bit of red paint on it. And then, of course, you can have your man who's trying to escape from a building that's on fire. So painting the fiber is very, very straightforward and simple. So there it is. In fact, on this one, I'd actually, instead of painting the fiber, I'd used some cellophane. And usually when you got light and cellophane, that's not a good mix because of heat. But because you don't have any heat at the end of the fiber, you don't ever have to worry about that sort of thing at all, because it's basically a very cold light that's at the end of the fiber. By the way, an easy way to make curtains. This is something I discovered by accident. My grandchildren had been playing around with wax crayons onto some paper, onto some translucent paper. And I just cut that up, slapped it on the back of a building, and basically it looks like curtains. So instead of buying special material, let your grandchildren have some fun and you can get good curtains out of that. So how about Christmas lights? Obviously, we just passed Christmas, but what you can do is you can actually nick the fiber. So the fiber has a jacket on the outside of it. If you take the fiber and you actually then damage it by just nicking it with a utility knife or with a pair of wire cutters where they've got, the round wire holes, and you just go around the wire with that, you'll end up getting light out. Now just paint that red, green, red, green, red, green, and you've got yourself a set of Christmas lights. So very, very simple idea. So, of course, my English pub has to have Christmas lights on it. So I'll just run you through this. So here we have an upspout. That's nothing but a piece of fiber painted brown. I then bent the fiber so that I knew exactly how it would fit onto the building. I put a permanent bend in it. I then painted it brown so you couldn't see the light from the rest of the fiber. Then I just nicked it, and painted it red-green. And I did the same with this one, but this was just a straight line and then coming down again, a downspout. So you're looking at 60 lights there, and it took me all of about 30 minutes. So that's kind of fun. Any questions on that? While I have a quick cup of tea. All right, moving on. So you can change the intensity of the lights. Now, I was really fooled at my first meeting I ever did with this, which was an NMRA show in 2018. A customer asked me, "Oh, can you change the intensity of the light?" And I said, "No, you can't really. It's just what it is." I was a fool. What you do is you just take the light and the fiber and you remove it from the lamp lighter. So I'll just demonstrate that, in fact. So I've got some fibers here. And I'm not sure how well this will come across. I'll choose a fairly dim fiber. But if I start pulling that out of the box, do you see how that's dimmed?
Yes.
So that's my resistor. That's my soldering a resistor in, right? I can choose exactly what light I want and adjust it, because say that one of the things I did discover was when I did this building and I've got that little room in there, I put a fiber in at first and it was just way too much light. Just, you couldn't see the artwork on the back of it, to see what was in, remember I showed you there's this sort of inside piece here. So all I did was just start pulling the fiber out until it dimmed it down enough that I could actually get enough light contrast and see the back of it. I went, okay, good, done. So that makes life very, very simple. But what if you want to bend it? Now you saw what I'd done with the Christmas lights on my English pub. Well, all you need to do is I take two pieces of tubing. So there's my two pieces of tubing. I have a piece of fiber in between, and then I put these in boiling water. So here, actually, you've got one piece of tubing here. There's the other. I'm holding onto it back here, and I just create a bend. I can bend that to any angle I want, very simply. Boiling water is much easier to use than a hot air gun. The reason is, if you use a hot air gun and it goes a little wild, you got spaghetti. It's cooked. Throw it away. Whereas this, you can actually make a bend. Maybe it's too sharp, and you can then adjust it. So you can adjust it whatever you like. And as soon as you pull it out of that boiling water, it's hard. It's done. And it'll keep that same bend. Again, the reason for the tubing is two things. One is it keeps the fiber very straight on either side of that bend, but also it keeps your fingers out of the boiling water. So, and I have videos on that on my YouTube site. So that's one where I bent some fiber and I did multiple bends. And one of the things you're going to see is down here, I actually bent it too sharp. That's really sharp bend. And I've got quite a bit of light coming out. So that's okay if I don't care to have as much light out at the end. But if that's too much of a bend and I'm losing too much light for my application, then I'm going to have to go back in and undo that bend a bit. Again, it's all reversible. It's very easy to do. So you just don't want to have too sharp a bend on it. And I have a rule of thumb. The rule of thumb is basically that if you had something like a 1.5 millimeter fiber, your maximum bend should be about a 6 millimeter or a quarter of an inch minimum radius. But that's to lose no light. If you can put up with some more light loss, then you can make that a tighter bend. If you were dealing with fiber optics for data communication, they'd say you're nuts. It shouldn't be nearly as sharp as that. And they're right. But here we don't even want to lose 1 or 2% of light in fiber optic data communication. But my comment is just experiment, and that's the best way to go. Well, let's say you cut the fiber too short, or you have a modular layout, or you just want to connect even different size fibers. So what you can do is you can take a tube, and I'll show you how to do this. So we just cut some tubes. We have a silicon gel that has the same optical density as the fiber. And then what you do is, so I'll walk you through this. What I do is here's my tube. I take a piece of fiber, stick it through the tube, put a tide drop of this silicon fluid on it, draw the fiber back into about halfway, take the other fiber, stick it in that end, and hey presto, I've got a good connection. If I now want to make it permanent, I just crimp the ends of these slightly, and that'll tighten down onto the fiber, and I've got a permanent join. But if I've got a modular system, I'll only make one end probably a tight join and leave the other one far less tight. So that gives you some idea. And I think somewhere here, I may have an example. Oh, where is it? I can never find things, and I'm looking quickly. I did have some fibers that I joined together. I have this sort of box, and it has a collection of all these different fibers. The problem is my grandchildren come down and start playing with this stuff, and then I can't find out where it's all at. Well, okay, I don't think I'll be able to show you that one. I was going to show you one where I took some fiber, and I had about five pieces of very thin fiber connected into a 1.5, but we won't do that. Okay, so we sell them as connector kits. 1.5 millimeter comes with 6 couplers and a syringe of that gel. Now, one of the questions a lot of people ask me, and it's a great question, is how do you keep the fiber in there? Right. So right now, for example, with this box, I got tons of fiber, and it's it's sort of difficult to move those in and out. So what I designed this up with a grommet, and so that grommet sits at the end. If you only put one fiber in, it'll fall out almost straight away. 2, 3 fibers. By the time we get to 3, it's going to grab it. And more than that, it'll just grab the fibers. So it's really designed for putting quite a number of fibers into it, but it's the grommet that actually holds them there. Again, I'm just going to keep racing through until I hear somebody go, hold on a minute. One of the biggest challenges, and I had this just 2 days ago, 3 days ago on Friday, a customer called me and said, I'm very unhappy with your product. I said, okay, what's up? He said, I put a fiber into it and it's very dim. Well, the problem is because the fibers are bent. So if I take a fiber, I don't know if you can see that, but of course it's naturally bent, comes off these huge reels. Well, when that goes into the lamplighter, so let me imagine that I'm sticking this fiber into the lamplighter. So if it goes in here, I don't know if you can see it at the front there, it's not going to be aligned. So it should go straight in, but the fiber's not, because the fiber's bent and curved. So what it does, it's not going to pick up the light very well. So what I suggest to people is just do several things. One is you can take a stirring straw from McDonald's, stick the fiber onto that, and then put that down and just wiggle it around in the hole. And, so like, okay, fine, you'll see plenty of light. Your smarter thing to do is just stick a whole bunch of fibers in, and that's going to just straighten the fiber out. It just forces them, because there's a tube in there, and it's just going to force them in down that tube, and that will give you the efficient light collection. So I told him to do that. I haven't heard back from him. He's happy. So that's probably a very important trick. So what are the key benefits? Let's go back to the slide I started with, which was realism. I think it's great for realism. You can add light in seconds. There's absolutely no wiring. It's a cold light, so there's no heat dissipated near buildings or near area structures that could get hot. It's a cost-effective solution, I believe, and it allows for creativity. And I really believe this is the next generation of lighting beyond LEDs. And of course, I have to put a picture in like this. This is I think when you look at one of these, you go, yeah, I've seen one of those. I don't want to see that again. So really, it's, I call it a 3-step process. Take your lamplighter, take your drill, maybe some social distancing there, and take your fibers and put those up into your layout. So let's talk about building lighting techniques. Actually, that's where I talked a bit about that just a moment ago. Here's a building where I've actually taken some fibers and I just used some stirring straws to keep them straight. And it also hides the light that's coming from that fiber. Okay, so that's a very simple approach to take. So there's my fibers stuck up those little posts, you might say. And then obviously I'd put my building in front of it to light those up. And so if I was looking at this building here, what I did is actually along this wall and along that wall right behind here is exactly that. There's some stirring straws with some fiber stuck up it right close to the wall, because I don't want to be able to see that light by looking in through the windows, and it gives me plenty of light. So that's a very, very, very simple technique for the lighting. And in fact, I need to get a much better camera, but this is where I just looked in. I've got my carpet down on the floor and a rug. There's even a picture in the behind it. So I like decorating the inside of my buildings. So there's another building nearby where a guy's just walking over a dead cat. But this has got one of my HO lights on the top here. The reason I put this in, there's actually a light right down the side here, which I think I show here. Yeah. So here it is. So there's my stirring straw, the fiber sticking out of the top of it, but I'm looking right at the side of it so I can see into that building. But that one light provides me, that one fiber provides me with plenty of light inside this building here. So, okay. Customer showcase. So I like showing off what customers do. So this was one of my first ones. You all know Mark Jewett, right? So he's an NMRA guy. Mark grabbed my lamps, and at first he sent me a picture, and it had this and this lit and this one, and nothing in the train station. I said, Mark, why didn't you want to light the inside of your building? He said, well, the problem, Michael, is it's got a solid floor to. Oh, no, it wasn't a solid. It was. I've already mounted it on my layout. So I said, Mark, how about a drill? And I left it at that. Next day, he sent me this picture. Problem was, he was thinking about LEDs, where he's going to have this little floppy LED. He's got to get inside the building. He can't because there's no room. There's nothing underneath. He's just got this, he's got the top surface of his layout, and then the building glued down on top of it. So once again, it was one of those, you got to remember, things will be different when working with fibers. You won't have some of the hindrances that you do with LEDs. I love this. He actually put two headlights. He got 4 headlights into this car. And there's this guy Al Judy. I love his great stuff on his trains. Right, it's just really fun. This is Paul McCarty. You've seen his name before. This is one of his favorite pictures that he sent me, where here's a man reading his newspaper outside the library. And by the way, the library is completely solid, so we can't light anything inside. It's just a block of granite or whatever it is, or plastic. But here's this lamp, and it's just shining beautifully down while he reads his newspaper. And you can see then, obviously, the dark spaces around. And then one of the things I did with him was play around with a fiber along the back here to create basically what he called a moon glow. And quite honestly, this is what I call my Thomas Kilcade painting, but it's really a picture from his layout, where he's using our swan neck lamps, using building lamps, and he actually now has this lighthouse lit up using a fiber with some special techniques. Back to Al Judy, those are lights there. Yeah. This I did a competition on our Fiber Guild. So we have the thing called the Fiber Guild on YouTube. On Facebook, and had a bit of a competition. And this was one of the ones that won a prize with us. And it was just beautiful because the picture just gives you this sort of November-ish look on a railway station somewhere in New Jersey while people are waiting for the trains. This was an odd one. This is a parking garage or parking lot, sorry, and is using our highway lamps to light this area. I'd never expected to see them used in that way, but it was quite effective. So nice job. This is a refueling yard, and again using these highway lamps. And this is one using those highway lamps in a container yard. So yeah, quite useful. I love some of the N-scale pictures I get to. This is from Paul Boccadero. He's got these ice skaters, and you can see the reflection of the lamps. Just beautiful stuff in terms of photography. But there's some fun things you can do with fiber without having to even buy anything other than the fiber. What I did here was this building, which is on my layout, I put a cover over the door. I put a piece of foil underneath the cover, and then I stuck a fiber, just drilled a hole in it, stuck the fiber out. I can't see the fiber, but I can see the effect of the light from it. So very, very simple to do that sort of, lighting. There's my little guys digging up the road, of course. There's another one, just beautiful lights going up to a church building. And I have to introduce this guy, Steve Juranic's beautiful work on buildings. So he sent me this picture where he'd used our lamplighter and the fibers. And there are a couple of things that struck me. One, just, sort of the wet scene, the sort of grubbiness of it. It really looks, very real. But you can probably see up here, this is really what caught my attention. That's his company name, his signage. So I called him up. I said, Steve, how did you do it? So, well, here's a bit of a show and tell. So there he is with the lamplighter, precariously mounted. He's used heat shrink tubing where he doesn't want the light to come out from the fiber. He's actually grazed the fiber in the areas, so he's got more light coming out than it normally would. And then here he put a whole lot of fibers down into what looks like a little box. And I'll show you what he did with that. So, yeah, so here it is. Here's those fibers going down into this box. So he's looking at the back of it here. And what he did is he actually scraped those fibers so they look like, fluorescent lights. And so it's very, very simple to do. And there it is you can see there's the piece hanging there and the fibers hanging out of the building just before he puts the piece up. So of course, after that, immediately I put a signage up on my own layout, Dwarvin, right? Lighting without wiring. And again, very simple to do. I just did exactly what he did. And then I've got my signage. So I do have some fun with it. And that's my senior dwarf. That's Austin. And I was in Australia at the time when he was working on this bridge. And I said, Austin, I didn't ask you to work on that bridge. What are you doing? He said, oh, I'm going to put some signage on it. I don't know if any of you know what happens when you go down from Philadelphia to Trenton. There's this sign on the railway bridge that says, Trenton makes, the world takes. So I don't know if you've ever seen that. So that's what he made. He put that on the bridge on this, and together with this guy, Michael Dettinger. And they actually showed that it's a module basically. So it was very effective. All he did was he took these fibers. So here we go. So he took fibers. You can see them going down here and across, painted them black. And then crazy enough, he took a utility knife and just scraped this out until he got that right. How's that? It's fun. So you can make, all sorts of ways to make up your signage. So that was a different way. Then I meet this guy, Steve Jacobs, and Steve goes down to Disney World 4 times a year. He just loves the place. His wife used to work there, and I think he did too. But so he's got our fibers there, and again, what he's done there, he's just put fiber around, he's bent the fiber, he's nicked it in places to give it some extra glow. But it was funny, when he first sent it to me, the flag wasn't lit, and I said, Steve, in America, it's illegal to have a flag that's up and flying and not lit. So I said, here, just stick a fiber up. So next time he sent me a picture, there it is. He stuck a fiber up there, and he's got his flag lit very easily. So this is my layout. There's my waterfront. So I've got these somewhat wobbly put-in globe lamps. And there's my swan neck lamps. Unfortunately, my camera doesn't allow you to see the colors, but I've actually got slightly orange color on there. So I imagine that's placed when my wife and I go walking down the riverfront, and it's sort of a romantic evening. And there's my English pub sitting right down at the end there. And if any of you ever like some techniques of taking pictures of lights, what I did with this was I took a camera mounted on a tripod, took it to an f/22 setting. So I've taken the lens and I really cranked that thing right down. I leave it for about a 15-second exposure and you get some beautiful sparkle. So if you ever want to know how to do that, that's the easy way to do that. And it's a great effect. Makes my lights look brilliant, but it's really all just camera work, I tell you.
Michael, this is Rusty Herman out in Alpine. And Brooks, I need to go and I've got to make some long distance calls. So I enjoyed your presentation. I have your equipment. I just got to use it now.
Thank you. Just use it. Absolutely. It's a pleasure. I'm sorry if I've been a bit long-winded. I can.
No. I just have other commitments too. So.
Okay. All right. Okay. I'm nearing the end, but thanks so much.
Yeah, thank you.
So, so there's some tail lights, red tail lights. And of course, I got a Jaguar police car, but this is O gauge with the headlights on. Another customer sent me these with, so the truck's lit up. And this is a beautiful one. This is an O gauge railroad station. And again, you see the pools of light. So as the train comes down here, it's coming in and out of the lighting and then into the station itself.
Hey, Michael, can you go back like about that slide you were talking about with that one. Is the billboard lit with the fiber as well?
Yes. Yeah. Oh, yeah. So cool. I didn't mention that. Yep. So there's some lights over billboards. We sell those as well. Nice. So, yep. So thank you for pointing that out. I forget that.
Yeah, it looks like it's really evenly lit with it too. Yep.
It should be. It's so actually we sell them with and without the graphics. So
okay.
Yep. So let's move for. Oh yeah. So this is sort of really caught my eye. I would love to see a big oil refinery lit up, but this is the best I've got so far. But you can see all he's done is he's just taken the fiber and nicked it in places, and beautiful lit up oil refinery.
But John's got an oil refinery on his layout.
Who does?
Light it. John does.
Yeah. That'd be great. So we did come out with an animation unit. We actually don't sell this anymore at the moment. So I'm going to jump over this. But we do have HO railroad crossings, NCL, and O gauge. And we have those coupled now into a unit which we call our DFL, a dedicated flash unit. All you do is you just take the fibers, and you've got 4 fibers if you've got 2 railroad crossings, stick them into these. That's what you do. What you're going to do is you're going to put this in for the detectors. So you're going to have a detector here with this is going to be plus ground, and there's the detector in the detector part. The bell links into the same screw holes, and basically you've got yourself a railroad crossing. You can also change there's some jumpers over here, change the jumpers, and it becomes a block signal detection system. So basically we sell that as a complete kit with the side-on detectors, crossing bell, DFL, and 2 railroad crossings. So I like this one. I don't think the sound's going to come on, unfortunately, but you can imagine it going, ding, 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 ding. Yeah. Okay. So I'm not going to be able to do the sound very well as the train comes across. But it's really nice when you've got a train coming from behind somewhere and, appears. So that's really this system that we sell there. So you've got the DFL unit. It just connects in with these 2 detectors, let's say one on either side of the crossing. We then have the triggers that go in as well to this. Then the bell itself, that connects in exactly the same way. These just connect straight into those holes there, and basically got a railroad crossing. And to me, I didn't know the value of that until my oldest grandson came back from college. He'd actually designed all my circuitry here, but he'd never seen it running. And I had my train going past, and suddenly the bells went off, the lights went on, and he just went, "That's amazing." It just, just lit it up for him. So good fun. So we have dwarf signals and tool signals. The dwarf we have in N as well as HO at the moment. We only have the tool ones in HO at this point. And again, it's just the same setup. So now you can use those as block signals either side of a tunnel or something like that. We also, our latest products are turnouts. So you can actually now signal with dwarf lights which way your turnout is set. And we've actually got 3 different products. One is for stall motors. We also have one for the twin coil, like the Atlas and so on, and then the bipolar snap ones for Kato and the others. So we actually, and all you do is just take our product, interpose it between the switch and the turnout motor itself. And with these, it remembers which way the turnout is set. So this one for stall machines, very simple. This we actually just hook onto pin 1 and 8 of the tortoise. That provides the power for this. We then, so as the pin 1 and 8 is switched in polarity, which is all that happens on the tortoise machine, it switches an LED to be shining or not shining, and basically then it turns out dwarf signals either red or green. So very, very, very simple system. So that's how it sort of just gets wired up. So there's our tortoise. There it is mounted on the side of a piece of Velcro, just connected at pin 1 and 8. And we use these little suitcase connectors. So again, no soldering, nothing like that. So I'm just going to run this. Sorry, I always forget that I put these down. So yeah, okay, good. All right. So you can put tool signals in there as well. And so that's how it comes as a kit. You'd get the 3 dwarf signals. There's the suitcase connectors, and there's the little control unit that clips onto the tortoise. So let's look at these. So this is the box that we use. Looks rather like the DFL, but it's not. And it just accepts 6 fibers into it for each of the lights. And this one's designed for an Atlas turnout. And all you're doing is just taking the wires from this, put them down into basically a 3-screw hole mounting jack here, and then back onto here. So instead of putting this straight to here, you're just interposing this in between. And the same with the Kato, except it's a 2-wire system. And we do those in HO and N at this moment. So that's about it. Oh, we've been looking at I have made up some of these lamps for yards, but I haven't as yet been able to get those to the point where I can release them. So, pricing has changed a bit. I'm not going to cover that. Finishing up, visit our YouTube. It's Model Train Scenic Lighting, or our Fiber Guild for model railroaders, where you'll find a lot of information, or just visit Dwarvin Ent on Facebook. I hardly do anything on the latter, unfortunately, because I really enjoy the interaction that I get on the Fiber Guild with a lot of people interacting with us. That's it, folks.
Thank you. I'm going to look up the Fiber Guild right now looks interesting.
Okay.
Cool.
By the way, that's the family. I forgot about that.
Nice. Yeah, you live in Pennsylvania, right? Or you're
Central
not
Pennsylvania, just outside Harrisburg.
You're not in Australia anymore, so
No.
for some reason I thought you were in Australia.
No, actually, it's not a bad time in Australia.
Yeah.
It's East Coast time is 22 in the afternoon.
Cool.
But
Nice.
so that's my 6'6" son-in-law Joel, who does all my financing. There's Benjamin, the youngest, David, Austin, who's now at university, a helper who's actually working with us, my daughter, my wife, and of course yours truly. So that's the team. That's the ones that make all the product. I don't make any, by the way. I just sell it.
Yeah. Nice.
Thank you very much for your presentation.
You're welcome. Any questions, you can fire them to me. Obviously, you go to my website, you'll see my email address is just michael@dwarvin.com. And spread the news.
Yeah. Well, I see a lot of very good, applications for that. And I'm I'm actually working on this diorama module back here. I was trying to solder some 0201 LEDs to make a little like light string festoon. And I've been thinking about doing fiber optics too, because so far I've soldered one and I haven't gotten any others to solder yet. So, so the fiber optics might be the way to go with that. And it's in O scale, so it's not as small as HO, but
Right. Not
yeah.
finicky at all.
Yeah.
Right. I think my experience is it doesn't matter really what scale you are with the fiber, because it's sort of just so amenable to the different, like if you're using the big heavy fiber on N scale, yeah, it's horrible. But you've got very thin fiber, it's very easy to handle for N scale. Be hopeless for O scale. But you've got thicker, sort of like it just meets the need right where you are, rather than having to adapt something that it wasn't designed for.
Right. Is there a way to say if you got like a fiber tee off of that, or is there any way to splice it without, say like you run the one lane bladder and you need to have some further down the line,
Right.
You'd have to go all the way back to the source, right?
You do really. Unfortunately, it's probably one of the things that I think is the most difficult question I get, which is splicing end to end is easy. Splicing to the side. I did hear of somebody who did some of that, but you're not going to get much light. And there it is. It really depends. Do you just want to see a light, or do you want to really illuminate something? Mm-hmm. My whole game with this product was to illuminate, which really means I need huge amounts of light because it's got to shine onto things and light them up. But as soon as you move away from that, then it probably is possible. But you'll only be seeing, it'll diminish the light considerably.
Mm-hmm. And the fiber you're using, is that glass fiber, or is it like a plastic type of plastic? Oh, okay.
Yeah. It's funny, actually. Somebody at a show the other day just came up to me and said, "Oh, I used to work with glass fiber." Huh. But you got to wear gloves, you got eye protection. I mean, it is seriously horrible stuff. Because it's worse than fiberglass. You are always dealing with these tiny things, and they're always going to go into your fingers and break off. So no, this is all plastic, and so it's much, much nicer to work with.
Cool.
Great questions. Well, I've taken all your time, and I do appreciate it's been fun having a presentation with you.
Well, we appreciate you coming on and sharing all this with us. So. It's great knowledge. So
great. And by the way, you do get being an NMRA members, you get 10% in automatic discount. I think you put in NMRA 10 or NMRA as a code, and that does it.
That's with the partnership program, right?
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah. Make sure to take advantage of that, because it's actually, the money that you pay in for your dues, like you can make that back, so it kind of nets out, in a way, if you take advantage of that. So
yeah, I think it's a great plan. I'm really impressed with the NMRA.
Yeah, awesome. Is anybody else, BJ or John, y'all got any questions?
No, I'm fine. It was a very enjoyable presentation, and I'll definitely start looking at it.
Thanks very much. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Good. All right. Well, this was just a warm up for next week when I do this up at the Big E, as we call it, the Amherst meeting.
Yeah.
So good. All right. Well, we'll see you guys around, and probably at an NMRA meeting.
Yeah. Well, good luck with that, and thanks for coming on. So
you're welcome. Thanks so much.
Yeah. And with that, I'm gonna probably end the meeting here. So I want to thank everybody for joining us today, and thank Micheal for coming and presenting to us. And anyway, we'll see you next February. Then the next one is going to be on the third Monday of the month, so that is down on. Looks like it's on the 30th or the 20th. February. I don't have a clinician yet, but I'll get one for that. So be looking on the email newsletter when it comes out in February. If I have very high plans to get that put out this time. So skip the
Thank
last
you,
2
Bruce.
months. So,
Thank you,
but,
Bruce. Thank you,
yeah.
Michael.
Thanks so much. Thanks for being patient with me. Lovely. Good to
Bye.
see you.
see you all the next time. Bye.